welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast. My name is Pete Flecha, and joining me as always is my good friend, Mr. John Nicholson. John, where's the hat? That's the wrong hat, man.
We're launch here, so it's time to push it to production. So I got the right hat for that.
Oh, I guess you do have the right hat then. Yeah, you threw me off there, man. I was like, no cowboy hat. Now you got your summer shirt on. You got your push to production.
Yeah, I've got happy summer vibes here. Someone accused me of being a fake cowboy on Reddit this week, and shout out to that person because they definitely apologized shortly thereafter. But I figured I would mix up the hat this week in honor of that. So.
Very nice. Well, yeah, it looks good either way, man. You're, you make everything look good. You're a pretty fashionable guy. John, it's VCF 9 launch week. Last week was crazy. We've been pushing out. We did do the Virtually Speaking podcast series that's on the VCF YouTube channel, so check that out. But yeah, this next couple of weeks is going to be filled with nothing but slightly deeper dives into the various components. We had a great conversation with Pete Keeler on vSAN, and man, it's the logical next step to dive into some vSphere. And so joining us to talk about vSphere this week, a couple of good friends of ours, starting with our friend Mr. Harshad Colte. Harshad, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be back, Pete and John.
Absolutely. And peeking in that little window over there is another good friend of ours, Mr. Feidhlim O'Leary. Feidhlim, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey guys, good to be back. Yeah, it's been a few months since I was on this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, gentlemen, I'm looking forward to. We've been looking behind the scenes for a couple of months. I'm excited to finally be able to talk about some of these things in person. I think vSphere had a lot of really cool updates. I have some questions as well, so I'm sure this will make for an educational experience for our listeners, but myself included. So why don't we just start high level, talk a little bit about vSphere, what it looks like inside of VCF 9. Harshad, I'll start with you. Anything you want to kick off with as it pertains to VCF 9 with vSphere?
Yeah, absolutely. And just before talking about vSphere specifically and what's new content, want to just remind folks, vSphere came into existence a couple of decades ago, and kind of forgotten that vSphere is still the number one virtualization platform. And some of the things that we were talking about is, in the grand scheme of things, the market has changed over the last couple of decades. We used to talk about a lot about digital transformation, but here are some key trends that are shaping what are the types of developments that we are and new features that we are bringing into vSphere. So a couple of those, those 2-3 stats there, they are kind of showing the trend of how workloads are moving now, right? They are not just quote unquote, I put it in air quotes, traditional VM based workloads, but there's a huge trend for workloads which are cloud native and are built on microservices or container based architectures. Some of those stats talking there, right? 95% of organizations will move to those types of architectures by 2029. 75% of organizations are making sure that they have some Kubernetes story. But that third thing that I put in there is specific, right? Because yes, there is a big focus on workloads, containers, but you have to remember these are still today. If we take an inventory of workloads today, more than half of those workloads are still on VM based workloads. So us keeping that focus on vSphere as far as what are the new features, we have to keep that context that yes, we have to be able to provide not just for features that will help for workloads for the future, but also for today. So that's kind of the background that I wanted to start off with. And you'll see that, and when Feidhlim will talk about some of those features in detail, we'll talk about how they map up. Right. So going back to very high level, and I'll just give a smattering so that we can go into some of the features.
Yeah.
We look at vSphere from a use case perspective. And even if you look, I don't know whether you have already done the VCF, what's new equivalent of the podcast, but VCF also we talk a lot about the solutions and the use cases, right? We have kind of the use cases on modernization, what are important from a cloud experience, and then from a security and resilience perspective. And vSphere also, we kind of are aligning to that from a modernization perspective, what are the things that are important? What is the use case? And that focus is heavily on how you can build a modern private cloud. And like you saw in the Cube interview, when Krish was talking about and Paul was talking, private cloud is not a location. It's an operating model, which still looks at on premises, right? So how can we make sure that organizations can do that? That's kind of the modernized compute infrastructure story. And there are those 4 5 bullets that we are going to talk a little more in detail, are about the ability to do the feature for NVMe memory tiering, native EPCs, etc. You can read from the list. That's kind of on the modernization side. In that middle area, which is like I was just talking about, the importance of containers and VMs, right? Being able to manage them consistently and seamlessly across, and being able to support both of them. That's where a lot of our features are focused on Kubernetes services, right? VKS, which we branded back at the 5.2 time frame, but a lot more enhancements going in there for cluster management, observability, and such, and then some other features to make sure that they are conformant to CC, upstream Kubernetes wise. And finally, on the security and resilience side, we have some new features coming in there, as well as some tech preview items. And we can go one by one into it a little later on. But the overall message I wanted to give was that vSphere is making sure we are true to our roots, which is a virtualization platform. We haven't forgotten you VI admins. We'll keep on making sure that we are going to bring features that are important to you, for not just for today but also for planning for the future. I'll pause there.
Nice, nice,
When
nice.
I did like that last bit about, you talked about this is also for the existing admins. Like, we've got these new applications, these new workloads that maybe not everybody's there yet. Maybe it'll be a while. But looking at some of those bullet items, things like the certificate management, like these are not fancy, flashy things that I would have
Yes.
historically seen a marketing person like go talk about and go stand on stage and be like, certificate management. Like, that's,
Yes.
you're going after, like, yeah, we're going to get so many net new customers with that. It's like, no, this is taking care of existing people. This is taking care of the
Yes.
existing operator. This is taking care of that existing person who currently, is rotating certs and increasing in speed in that, and probably does not enjoy that part of their life.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I cut my teeth in support and made a name for myself being the certificate replacement guy in GS for vSphere 4. So yeah, where were those features when I was when I was in support?
Yeah. For sure. Well, Feidhlim, on that note, like, I know there's been a lot of different changes, and I like the way we break it down into the three key use cases. Maybe we could start with that first pillar, if you will, the modernizing workloads. And there's a lot of different things I'd love to hear about in that area. I know there's been some changes to even the interface, and I know enhanced link. There's been changes to enhanced link mode, and VCF addresses some of those. I had some questions about that. I know there's NVMe tiering. Where do you want to start? I'll let you drive.
Yeah, so just to touch on a couple of the items that we saw on the slide, things like Monster VM, that's our typical, hardware version 22 we're up to now, our virtual motherboard, essentially adding more CPUs, more RAM, the latest guest OSs, things like that to your virtual machines. It's nothing fancy, but it's something that a lot of our customers do like to look towards if they want larger VMs. Some things like newer guest OS support for those defaults to make it easier when they're deploying those workloads, deploying those templates, just makes life a lot easier for them. In that bucket as well, we had the NVMe tiering. Now, that went tech preview in 8.0 U3 last year or 18 months ago, but it's fully supported now for production. It can coexist with vSAN as well, which is great. And I always sometimes I think about this when you'd see those ads on the internet decade ago, click here to download more RAM. Well, it's not quite as good as that, but we are essentially taking existing NVMe technology and almost presenting it to ESXi as additional RAM, right? NVMe is super, super fast nowadays. Now, it's obviously still slower than traditional RAM or DDR RAM, but there's a lot of workloads that don't necessarily need DRAM, or there's a lot of cold pages that we want to actually put onto the NVMe and free up that super fast DRAM for for the hot pages, essentially. And this is all done transparently by ESXi. The user doesn't need to go fiddle around and move pages or move VMs between different memory tiering. It's all done by the platform, which is great. So it's going to really increase customers' abilities to increase the density of their workloads on their hosts, pack more VMs onto their servers, get more bang for their buck. Because typically CPU isn't the bottleneck, isn't the resource that we exhaust first. It's usually memory, and then maybe storage. But CPU is definitely not the first bottleneck that most customers tend to hit here. So customers will be able to pile more VMs, get the same performance out of them, and really improve the overall consolidation in their servers. So it's really something that we've been working on for years, and it's great that it's now fully available. It even supports DRS. It supports, you can have a mixture, have some hosts have memory tiering turned on, some hosts don't have to have it turned on within the same cluster. So it all just behaves just seamlessly together.
PCIe pass-through support, do we have that?
Sorry, what was that, John?
Can we run it alongside PCI pass-through devices and other things? I know there was like a long list there.
I don't see why not. I don't have a list in front of me of things that aren't supported out of the box. I don't see why not. I don't see why the PCI pass-through would interfere with it. Obviously, you wouldn't pass through the NVMe device, but you could pass through a GPU, pass through a NIC or whatever it might be. But yeah.
Okay, and I see the RAID support on here. Is that for protecting basically that memory device from a failure?
Yeah, this is hardware-based RAID support right now for the actual NVMe devices themselves.
Yeah, and I know this was tech preview before, so this is so I guess VCF 9 is the first version where vSphere is fully supporting this. So this is full production ready.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Full production ready. I know there was a lot of limitations in the tech preview or the beta. They're all ironed out now. Full production ready for VCF 9 and for vSphere.
Yeah. Okay. So that the NVMe tiering, I think, is going to be one that's a big one. I know there's been some other changes too, as it pertains to vGPUs, vGPU-enabled VMs. Maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the changes there.
Yeah, so we've been doing a huge amount of work with NVIDIA for the last, it must be a decade now, right? Turning vGPU-enabled VMs into what I tend to call first-class citizens. They no longer have these limitations where you can't snapshot them, you can't vMotion them, you can't storage vMotion them. They're behaving now more like just your regular VMs that we all know and love. So and as GPUs get larger, as the memory capacity within the GPUs gets larger, one challenge that we started to see was, okay, we're seeing some increased runtimes and sometimes some application degradation when we're vMotioning these GPU VMs, because it's different than transferring just the RAM of a VM from one host to another. The GPU is a lot more complex. But we've worked a lot with NVIDIA, and we've worked with them with their drivers. We've worked with the VM kernel team, the ESX host team, to dramatically reduce the stun time and increase the speed as to which we're transferring that GPU memory. Yeah, so we were just talking about we had these monster vGPU VMs with huge amount of memory, over 600 gigs of memory, and in previous releases, we couldn't actually vMotion those. It was just too much GPU data, too much memory to transfer from host A to host B. We've done so much optimization in the VM kernel in ESX that we can now actually vMotion those gigantic vGPU profiles, that gigantic amount of memory it's around 20 seconds or so, which in vMotion terms sounds long, but in vGPU vMotion terms, that's nothing. That is huge. And if you combine one good use case for an old feature like vMotion notifications, is that we can combine that to use vMotion notifications to tell your GPU application, hey, you're about to be vMotioned. Maybe pause what you're doing to prevent the application from too interrupted by that 20 seconds sometime. So there's value here in adopting some of the older technologies as well with these GPU-enabled VMs.
Yeah, and for those that are, only listening, this won't make any sense. But for those that are watching the video, did you intentionally make this slide look like a robot, or?
It does look a little bit like a robot now that you say it. That wasn't my intention. I suppose I should have put the brain icon up at the top, but yeah, it's a bit of a lopsided.
Yeah, the brains look like
Frankenstein's
fists,
monster.
Yeah, the brains look like fists, and I see he's got like tanks, for feet. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's my brain.
I didn't see it until you've said it. Now I can't unsee it.
Hey, I was going to just chime in very, very quickly, and I know that maybe you're going to still talk about GPU profiles, but again, going back to that theme we talked about, being able to still support the existing admin and building on, right? So you can see how we have made progresses for GPUs, right? Starting from vGPUs, then being actually able to slice and dice and share with vGPU profiles. Then in ATU3, we got heterogeneous vGPU profiles. You can share them better. And then DRS support for vGPUs, and now vMotion support. So we are keeping on building and keeping on adding more and more so that you can do see that progression of features as we are rolling through, and the latest with 9.0. So just wanted to chime in on that. That's it.
Absolutely. And kind of building on that with the enhanced DRS support, DRS has previously just not been able to understand GPU workloads as effectively as it can with the CPU and the memory and even the storage metrics. But we've again done a lot of work with NVIDIA to expose a lot more of those metrics, to identify the utilization at the actual consumed memory as well. So DRS is exceedingly more intelligent when it comes to GPU placement, understanding whether or not I actually should move a GPU-enabled VM from one host to another for load balancing or optimization perspectives. And we're introducing as well the ability to do GPU resource reservations, which is something new in the vSphere space or in the VCF space. And it works similar to memory CPU reservations. The idea behind it is that within the infrastructure, you can create a GPU reservation ahead of time, so that portion of the GPU resources is carved up, it's reserved, it's ready to be used, so that when you do go and deploy that AI ML workload or that GPU enabled workload, the resources are going to be there. The VM is going to power on, and the VI admin won't have an issue on their hands. So that's something that's new as well in vSphere 9, VCF 9. I think this slide that you have has a build on it. I think that shows some of the information.
It's interesting seeing just all the resource management that we've done for all the compute and storage and networking, and it's coming to GPUs, it's coming to all these resources. And when you look at the cost delta on what these GPUs cost, especially compared to the CPUs or everything else, that is a huge amount of money to be wasted to have idle. So pretty vital feature for anyone.
Exactly. There used to be so many caveats, so many gotchas if you had a GPU enabled workload, back in the 6.7, back in the vSphere 7 days. Now it's really getting to the point where it's just another virtual resource for the VM, and it's transparent. We don't have all these caveats, these gotchas, and everything just works with it. And Pete, just going back to what you asked a question earlier about the link mode. So let's just jump back to that enhanced link mode, or that new version of link mode, because that's something that a lot of customers are familiar with today. Enhanced link mode, put all your vCenters, or put up to 15 vCenters in a single SSO domain, single pane of glass. And I'm sure anyone that's done that with more than 2, 3, 4 vCenters has had challenges with data replication, not having to finagle when you have to patch everything to the same level at the same time and take multiple snapshots, and all this just annoying stuff for vSphere admins. We're kind of removing a lot of those headaches, because we're moving vCenter link mode into essentially VCF Operations. Now you just register your vCenters with VCF Ops, and you create what are called vCenter groups. It's very easy. It's selecting vCenters in the UI, and you create a group. And you can put, obviously only one vCenter can be in one group at any time, but you can have multiple groups and you can assign different permissions to different groups. So, Pete, you could have access to group 1, John could have access to group 2. You're both seeing all the vCenters in those respective groups, but you're not crossing over each other. So it's a lot more flexible, and there's no breaking replication, adding replication, worrying about all that sort of stuff.
Oh, no PSC replication?
No, we're moving away from that model, thankfully. It's still there. I mean, you can still use the existing enhanced link mode today in VCF 9, in vSphere. It is deprecated, and this is going to be the future replacement then. Now, some of the features that you got with that PSC replication, like tag replication, what else got replicated? I think there were some permission replications has been separated out. So they're all independent kind of features now through VCF Operations.
Yeah, I mean, but this seems like a much better version of enhanced link mode, if you will. I mean, I don't think. I mean, enhanced link mode I think was very helpful, but you couldn't do things like create individual groups, right? I mean,
no, exactly. And it was limiting in the fact that if you were upgrading one of your vCenters, let's say from update 1 to update 2, you typically had to upgrade them all to update 2 at that same
there was a lot of
maintenance
lockstep.
window.
You needed to take backups. Like from a recoverability, you'd go back in time issues. There was a lot of weird Anybody who was deep into the operations.
This is way more flexible. Yeah, you could leave one of your vCenters on 9.0 GA. Not that you should always patch to the latest, but you can keep that. You can keep vCenters on different versions and different patch levels within the same group, and that single pane of glass feature isn't going to break.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a quick visual of it on the.
In the VCF Ops. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. All right, well, let me jump back to the map here. I know we had a little bit of a, we talked a little bit about these groups. Let me check where we're at. So I want to be respectful of all your time. So we're cutting into some of these. Which one of these do we want to touch now?
We've kind of cut between a little bit of the modern compute. We've talked a little bit of modern workloads with the GPU stuff. I'm not the super knowledgeable person in the supervisor space, but I do know that we've done some great work there for that day zero enablement. We can make it really, really simple to stand up just kind of your initial day zero supervisor. It can even just be one supervisor control plane VM. You don't even have to have a load balancer hanging off it for that day zero functionality to really kind of just accelerate that adoption. And you can expand that then in day 2 or day 1 operations. Add that load balancer, scale out the supervisor, things like that. We've made it so much easier to get up and running on that supervisor platform compared to when we first launched this in vSphere 7. Decoupling the updates from vCenter is a huge win as well, because patching a vCenter, to us it's a simple thing. You click the button, you patch, you get a coffee, you go away. That's not how it works in the real world. And vCenter patches up until now were the release vehicle for the supervisor patches. And those supervisor patches, that Kubernetes versions, their cadence is much, much faster than us. It's every 3 months, maybe less. So now you can update those supervisors, update your Kubernetes platform much, much quicker and agnostic from patching the vCenter.
Yeah.
So that's going to really, really drive adoption.
Absolutely.
I'll add on a couple of comments to both of those supervisor features, right? That first feature that Feidhlim spoke about, being able to start small, is very important, because the prior challenge was, if you're going to a container-based architecture and the admins had to really plan things out, which means until they have figured out how they're going to slice up those clusters, what workloads are going where, they couldn't start. So day zero was a major blocker, that you had to have the entire supervisor configuration planned out completely. So the ability to start small and then keep adding, that's why that's adding that value, so that you can start get on board very fast. And the same thing about the Kubernetes version. Of course, in 8U3 we just made the supervisor independently separated out from a release, and we have gone a step further. But that really becomes important because you can now be a true, I put it in air quotes, Kubernetes shop, right? You want previously you had to wait for an year before you could get to the next release because you're tied to vCenter releases. Now just a couple of months away. So this N-2, and you'll see that in some of our collateral, right? That we are N-2 Kubernetes versions away. That means you can sync to the latest BKRs or Kubernetes releases upstream fast, and also conformant. So very important for the folks who are planning on migrating to Kubernetes clusters architectures. So
Absolutely. Well, why don't we keep the conversation going with patching? I know there's been some changes to live patching as well.
Yeah, this launched again initially with 8U3, and it's a really exciting feature. The only downside is so far we haven't released a live patch capable patch, so customers haven't actually been able to see this in action. Hopefully that's going to change with 9 because we've expanded the surface area of ESX that is now live patch capable. It used to just be the portion of the VMX within ESX, the bit that handles the virtual machine execution runtime. We've expanded it now to NSX bits can be live patched. Some user space bits like host D service can be live patched. The VM kernel itself can be live patched within the scope of security vulnerabilities. That's what we're targeting here. With this release, but it will allow us to deliver security patches to customers and allow them to install those patches without having to evacuate their hosts, without having to go through that really tedious, time-consuming portion of putting a host into maintenance mode and watching 100 VMs slowly evacuate, right? That's the long part, that's the headache of patching. It's not the actual patching itself, it's the evacuation of the host and doing that one after one after one after one. And that's what's great about live patching is that the VMs stay in place, the VMs stay running, and we patch the hypervisor essentially and reload any services that get patched.
Yeah.
So it's really it is a game changer in our patching story. And now that we've expanded the surface area that can be live patched, I'm hoping that we'll see some live patch capable patches come out in the VCF 9 timeframe.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is for years, a lot of people I would always try to talk to them and be like, look, you need to stop necessarily trying to be eyes on glass for your whole patch window, but that's an organizational posture people have. But one of the downstream effects of patch time was it basically limited how big people could build their clusters because they generally would only have a window that was so long, or they only wanted to stay up so late at night, or whatever that operational limitation was. And it also, not just cluster size, but it also limited things like how much memory they would put in a host, or maybe it might drive, network bandwidth concerns for vMotion networks. You had this whole downstream other architecture decisions of, hey, why did you guys stop at 12 hosts in a cluster? Oh, well, I only got a patch window from 10 to midnight, and that was it. And so like this is a huge improvement, and it's also just going to hopefully let some of you go be able to read your kids to sleep at night instead of staring at vMotions like paint dry.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on patch management, I heard that one of the other things that's being deprecated is VUM. And I know VMware recently did a survey with a bunch of customers, and there was like a pretty large amount of customers that were still using VUM. It actually surprised me because I know VLCM has been around for a while now, but there's a lot of different enhancements now with VLCM. Can we talk a little bit about some of the ways people are using them?
Like we deprecated VUM update manager, I think back in the 6.7 days. It's like that deprecated feature, that bad smell that won't go away. But we had work to do, right? We had work to do with VLCM to fix some gaps that you could do with VUM that VLCM couldn't do. And one of the last hurdles so that we can finally put VUM to rest is support for mixed vendor clusters. Being able to have a cluster that's got a mix of, a HPE host, a mix of Dell hosts, maybe a mix of Lenovo hosts, whatever it might be. And that's kind of the real use case for this feature. For those customers that have that sort of an environment, they can't necessarily split everything into just single vendor or single homogeneous clusters. We wanted to support that mixed topology. And by doing this, we're hopefully now bringing those last few customers up into the VLCM, that single image model. And it supports everything across the board. It supports if you've got NSX, if you've got vSAN. It's really taking that VLCM model of a single image, and you just have these child images, almost these additional sub images. Your ESX based version will be the same across the board, but you could have 3 hosts with the HPE vendor add-on, 3 hosts with the Dell add-on, for example.
Yeah.
Even add multiple hardware support managers to the single cluster to support that firmware lifecycle as well. So it's really great that we're doing this. You can have up to 4 additional images. So technically, if you want to have 5 different hardware vendors in one cluster, you can. It's not something I would necessarily advocate for. Just from a management perspective, we do like to see things to be a little bit more homogeneous. But you can do it. It's supported if it fits your business case, if it fits your use case.
I remember talking to customers back when it was called VMworld, when VLCM first came out, and talking about, oh yeah, this is really cool how you can have this one image for your entire cluster. And I do remember multiple customers telling me, like, sounds good, but it's just not real. My environment that I'm going to now have to have multiple clusters if I want to do that, because they're not all exactly the same. And I remember going back to some of the folks that were in engineering and like, well, you guys want some feedback? Here you go. Because that was definitely one of the first things I heard when we first started talking about VLCM, was like, one image definitely is a good thing, because you want everybody to be on the same ESX version, right? Like there's a real value to that. But at the same time, there's different hardware vendors, there's different firmware, things like that. Not every server is the same.
Exactly. It's like, the EU came out and said every phone has to be USB-C. Sounds great in theory on paper, but I'm still in this mixed stage now where I've got some lightning cables, some USB-C, some have the USB 2 on one end, USB-C on the other. Now I have multiple different cables that I have to manage, but it'll eventually converge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Makes sense to me.
And one of the other big asks from the VLCM side is being able to manage all those clusters and all those images just from one single pane of view. Yeah, like this slide here, you had to go to every single cluster, edit the image, define it, do your scan, remediation, whatever. Now you can do that from just a top level view, be it a data center, a folder, even the vCenter view, and see all your list of clusters in one place, see all the images that are assigned to them, whether they're compliant, and you can do even the remediation, the staging, everything, all from one window, which is great, because it's almost like a little bit of what we had with vSphere Plus, where you could remediate multiple, kind of a fleet management type thing. We've just brought a little bit of that into vCenter to make life easier.
I like it. All right. Well, I know we're getting close to the time. Are there some other areas we want to cover before we let you guys go? Any other key features?
I'm trying to think. One of the other gotchas as well in terms of configuration management was lack of NSX support for vSphere configuration profiles. We've solved that interoperability now in VCF 9 as well. And Bob would probably give out to me if I didn't advertise some of his security enhancements. We're always making vSphere secure by default. We're TLS 1.3 default and only, FIPS 140-3. And we've got that certificate management that John mentioned at the beginning. There's actually some work done under the hood so that when you do change your vSphere side certificates, it doesn't have a cascading knock-on effect down the stack or up the stack, whichever way you want to go. So all the other VCF components don't complain that now they don't know what vCenter is up to because its certificate changed. So we're making that a lot just seamless and non-disruptive.
We did not kind of talk about the native VPC support, but is that what you were
yes, yeah.
as a bullet? Good.
There is, yeah, we do have some native VCP support as well in vCenter. It kind of slips my mind because I'm not a very NSX minded person. But yeah, we're bringing we're bringing more of the NSX native objects into vCenter again to stop this flipping between different UIs. We're trying to converge things into logically where they should be, and you'll have those VPC constructs that are serviced by NSX, but you can see them and interact with them and configure them right in vCenter as well. So you don't have to switch between different UIs to get that benefit.
Nice.
That's a repeat of our storyline, right? We are not forgetting our VI admins.
No, they pay my wages.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I know the presentations that I've seen on just vSphere alone, that we could probably do about an hour and a half. I don't want to take the entire time, but there's a lot of deeper stuff, and there's been some great blogs that you guys have been doing. Matter of fact, on the main VCF page, there's some blogs linked below for those that are on the YouTube for the Cloud Foundation, but also for vSphere specifically, there's been some great blogs. There's a short link there that takes to the vSphere blogs for VCF 9. So really good content.
There'll be more coming out. I'm not sure when this goes live, but there will be more. If you're listening to this, there's going to be more coming out on a regular cadence too.
Absolutely.
And one specifically on NVMe memory tiering that Arvind's doing.
Yes.
So,
yeah, absolutely. And if you get access to this presentation that we have, you'll see exactly these robot-looking diagrams that you guys have come up with that I'm pretty fascinated with. John, anything else about vSphere? I know you've got some burning questions. I can see that look on your face.
I've got like 400, but it looks like I think really that and this has also been my thing, is just go ahead and install it. Set it up in a lab, try out the hands-on labs when those are available. Just go poke at it. Like there's little things like that. I actually like a lot of the direction where Clarity's going. Like the UI framework, it's cleaner. It seems faster. Like there's, for all the main headline features, there's really like boring small things or really corner case things that might be important to you, like being able to boot from an NVMe over TCP device. Like I saw that in your notes. I'm like, there's just so many small features that we don't have time to give air to. But go read through release notes, go get in the lab, get it going.
Yeah, there's definitely one customer I spoke to at Explore 2 years ago, wanted to migrate his content library from one data store to another. And I told him, sorry, you have to export everything, create a new one and re-import it. If he's listening, you can now migrate from one data store to another, all your content library info. All you have to do is wait for 9.
Yeah, there you go. I will, and this is not a huge highlight, but I know there are, one of the questions we do get from customers, that I've spoken to is just in general, like it's not a licensing discussion, but like what VCF, for folks that didn't go to VCF yet, like what does that look like? What does vSphere look like? So I don't know. Harshad, do you want to just maybe very quickly before we take off, just give us a distinction between the different ways people are consuming vSphere now?
Yes, vSphere is like the slide shows, right? Broadcom's focus has been on our two main feature products, which is Cloud Foundation and vSphere Foundation. I think it's a journey, right? For the folks who are heavily vSphere and who have not been using or they are not consumers of our vSAN and NSX. Step one kind of looks like that first one, right? vSphere Foundation, because you have all of the goodness of vSphere, but now all of the operational features, some of which we just spoke about. So with what used to be operations for logs and logs insights, or ARIA ops and ARIA logs, that's part of vSphere Foundation. So that's kind of your step one if in your journey. But I think the overall direction of Broadcom has been to go towards this whole unification exercise, where all these components are no longer going to be just components, right? So even in that slide, you can still see VCF automation, VCF networking, but that what used to be NSX, what used to be ARIA automation, all of that is now in a part of the larger VCF stack, and that's the direction that we are going in. So for the vSphere customer, you can look at it as, hey, vSphere where VVF is step one, VCF is the larger one. It's a larger discussion, right? It depends on where you are in your journey, how many of the vSphere VMware components you are using. But
Yeah.
the direction is VCF is the direction that you want to eventually land up with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, gentlemen, thanks so much for giving us the latest on vSphere for VCF 9. As we talked about, links below for the blogs if you want to learn more about this. All the blogs are out there for vSphere, including your one on NVMe tiering already, Feidhlim. So good stuff on that. And
no, that was Dave. I can't take credit. That was Dave Morera.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to leave links to all of the vSphere blogs on the show notes of this podcast. So Feidhlim and Harshad, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.